warm New Year wishes for this year 2023, and this being the very first episode this year of book launch. We welcome you on the 13th day of the multivalent month of January. But before I delve deep onto what we are going to focus, have you ever imagined dining with a person or someone who killed your siblings and went ahead to exhume the remains of your dead father? Well, that is the author of the book, Risen from the Ashes, Theology as Autobiography in Post-Genocide Rwanda. And before we go ahead, allow me to introduce, I start introducing first the guest, Father Marcel. Thank you for creating time for this discourse.
Thank you very much.
And congratulations upon the publications of this piece.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be invited.
Kindly tell the viewer about yourself, your congregation, and what they should expect during this discussion.
Thank you very much. I also extend my warm greetings to everyone listening. We've just finished the Christmas season, but Christmas, Christ is born to us every day. So Merry Christmas to everyone and a Happy New Year to everyone. Wishing you blessings and peace. My name is Marcel Uwineza. I am a Jesuit, a priest. I am from Rwanda, and I am currently serving at the Hekima University College as the principal of the University College. Previously, I was the dean of the Jesuit School of Theology, and then I was asked to be the servant of the university. I am here, feel honored to be with my Lord here, Bishop Rodrigo Meia, and we are here to launch this book, Risen from the Ashes, Theology as Autobiography in Post-Genocide Rwanda, and I'm sure we are going to go deeper into the book shortly.
We are glad to have you. Your Lordship, could you just say a word? I know your face is familiar to the viewer, especially those who really follow closely our book launches.
Thank you, and I am very grateful for the invitation. First of all, the invitation of Father Marcel Uwineza to accompany him in this book launching, and also thanks to Capuchin TV for making known the book at the national level through the TV channel, the first TV channel in Kenya, Catholic. So I did not write the book, of course. The author is Father Marcel, but the reason to invite me here today is because perhaps I was the first reader of the book. Mm-hmm. As soon as it was launched, he has the delicacy, the gentleness to pass it to me to read, and I read it, and I wrote a small book review that he liked, and because of that, he told me, well, now that the book is going to launch, maybe you can be there to complement some of the questions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Bishop, for creating time. And we really appreciate that. Bishop Rodrigo Meia is the Bishop Emeritus of Sodo Hosanna in Ethiopia, and he is just going to give us to try and understand, walk with us through this book, because as you heard, he is among the first people who had the opportunity to read the book. So once again, my name is Sasha Elizabeth. This is Around the Table show, and off we start with our questions. My first question will be directed to the author, Father Marcel. What really influenced, what fueled your desire to put into writing your personal experience and to share it with the wide readership in Africa and globally?
Oh, thank you very much for the question, and really for the opportunity to tell something about this book. There is certainly more that can be said than we will have in this short time. But there are several reasons behind the writing of this book. But let me just mention a few behind this narrative. I come from a country that has had several wounds, and many wounds, and complex wounds. And so when I was growing up, I had this terrible experience of the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, And I'm not the only one, so let me put that up front. But then I have been privileged to have the opportunity to advance in studies through the Society of Jesus, since I am a Jesuit. And as I prayed, I said, maybe this is really a right time to put down what I have studied, but also, even more prominently, looking back at my life, how can I tell my story in a more meaningful and rational and maybe unbiased way that can be of help to people. And I do recall one of my professors, Father Orobator. He's currently the president of the Conference of Africa and Madagascar, the Jesuit Conference of Africa and Madagascar. When he taught me at Hekima, when I was a student there, he said, he used to tell many students, you Africans, if you don't write your story, you will be amazed by how your stories are told by other people. So I remember vividly that I was in the second year of my program, and I recalled that Rwanda had many stories to tell. So mine can be helpful too. And so that's one of the major reasons. So inspired by that motivation from Father Roberto. Secondly, I come from a country where many people have lost their voices. They don't speak. So I did write this book to lend a voice to so many people who died, who can't speak today during the genocide and the aftermath of the genocide. So this is my voice to so many who have been voiceless. And then thirdly, I do recall accompanying one of my esteemed, again, professors, the late Professor Laurent Magesa, Father Laurent Magesa, and I accompanied him to Musoma. He had just retired from teaching at Hekima University College, where I am now serving. And when I was about to come back, he sat me down and he said, Marcel, I have written several books, as you know, but I feel your story will touch many hearts. Please write it down. This is in June 2021. So I felt like Magesa was giving me a command. And I was about to go for a Jesuit formation in Lebanon. What the Jesuits call tertianship is the last formal formation of Jesuits, although formation is always ongoing. So, and during my time in tertianship, I felt this was a great opportunity to look back and see how God has worked with me. Some form of graced history, if you like. And so I had the opportunity now to respond to the invitation of Father Magesa. Please write your story down. Another reason is that I was invited to speak at the United Nations in 2019 about my story. And it was appreciated worldwide. So I said, why don't you write this story down? It will be helpful. But even more substantively, as someone who has done some studies in theology, when I look at the Gospels, these are narratives that through them we get to know who Jesus Christ is. So there is a way you can get to know theology or understand God through people's lives, and even more now through the Son of God. What are the Gospels? They are stories. And I have been privileged to teach St. Augustine, especially his book of Confessions, the Confessions of St. Augustine. This is not a novel. It's actually a book of theology, but based on the life of St. Augustine. And so several reasons. But now to conclude on this question, for us to understand who God is, we also need to go back to understand who the human person is. So if you like, there is a mutual relationship between the human person and God. Or if more technically, there is an inclusive relationship between theology and anthropology. So you can't speak of one without the other. So I do feel this book will help people to understand who the human person is and what we are capable of doing, especially when you go to the third chapter on the pain of Rwanda, but also the hope that has sprung that someone can still speak about God even when they are risen from the ashes. So several reasons under this book, but really I'm grateful to God who has journeyed with me. Our lives are lived forward, but they understood backward, said Soren Kierkegaard. So while we need to live forward-looking, but we actually really understand who we are when we look back. So this helps me, and hopefully it will help many people to look at their lives in a more positive way.
Thank you for that in-depth explanation. Now, as they say, just like everyone has got a skeleton in their closet, so is the fact that everyone has got a story to tell, whether already told or untold. But you would be asking, what exactly makes the story of the Marcel Uwineza, as told in this book, Risen from the Ashes, worth publishing, as it has been published by Pauline's Publications Africa, and of course worth your time to sit down and read. Bishop Rodrigo is one of the people who has read, and I'd like him to tell us what is the central message and what is the need to have this book as a Christian or non-Christian who is passionate about reading.
Well, my point of view is the point of view of a reader, of course, but my background is pastoral theology. That is what I have been teaching at Hekima and Kuea here in Nairobi for many years. And there was a kind of convergence of interest. I had, as anybody in the church should be, and especially for us Jesuits, an interest in knowing more about this tragedy in Rwanda, and that started precisely in 1994. I was at that moment in Rome as a consultant theologian of the AMESEA, and we were celebrating the first African Synod, the first Synod of Bishops, Special Assembly on Africa, the first one, May 1994. And there was just a coincidence that just at that very moment, this news, we got the news through TV and to the radio of the genocide in Rwanda. And no Rwandese bishop could attend the first African Synod because of that. They were blocked in the airport, of course. So at that moment we started reflecting what that has to say, what is the message from the civil society, from the human society in a country that was at that moment called the star of evangelization, because it had been very successful. It was called the star of evangelization in Africa. More than 63% of Roman Catholics in the country, more Christians because there are...
Genocide era.
Yeah. So, and there was a press conference, something very big in the Sala Stampa of the Vatican City, to which I could attend, and the journalists were asking what went wrong there, what can happen precisely in that country that we consider so advanced in evangelization. That was the beginning of my interest as a pastoral theologian, to reflect what can be done, what was missing, or how can we say that this may not be repeated in we are evangelizers. So this was an interest since then up to now, and it came just the book on the way. The book met my interest because I think that this is a beginning of response. The first response for a solution is awareness of the question. If we don't understand what happens, if we don't tell the truth of what is happening, we cannot provide the solution for the future in pastoral. And the same is for the church. So the book of Father Marcel was a book that was written honestly, according to his own experience, his own point of view, his own sufferings in itself, the value of an autobiography, but it's theology. It's not a novel, he said, and I agree completely. After all, the Bible is all stories. You know? From the Old Testament, even stories of slavery and stories of exile and all these things. All that is part. God reveals himself in the events of our human history. And that is why when Father honestly be ready to revise our methods, our approaches in catechesis, our approaches even in liturgy, and our even notion of inculturation. That is what is very important. Yeah.
Yeah, we did not expect. Yeah, we pause for the moment. Right, we apologize for that hitch, and you should bear with us, but we are back on air. We are discussing, we are launching the book Risen from the Ashes. Theology is an autobiography in post-genocide Rwanda, authored by Father Uwineza Marcel. And with me here in our makeshift studio today is none other than Bishop Rodrigo Mejia, who is the guest speaker in this launch today. So we move forward. Before we got interrupted, you were just trying to understand what message can you glean by reading this book. Allow me to go back to the author, Father Marcel. Your book depicts a vivid narration of tragic historical facts about your personal experiences that you went through. Now, right now, there are so many people who are affected. What is happening right now? Has Rwanda healed already? Are they in the process of reconciliation? Or what really is happening? And how will this book contribute towards making sure that whatever is going on is hastened or bears fruit?
Very much for the question. And as you know, reconciliation is a process. It's not just an event. So it takes quite a long time to mend broken relationships. And sometimes they may even never mend. At the same time, reconciliation, really, we have to go back to realize that God is first of all the one who takes the initiative and has reconciled us. And that's important. So this vertical dimension where first of all we know we have been reconciled with God. But at a human-to-human relationship, what I would call a horizontal dimension, Rwanda has made some strides. So there have been a journey that I can explain in different ways. So first of all, the first step was to know what happened. And I think His Lordship mentioned that. What happened, why did it happen, who did what, where, who died, where did they die. So that's already a process of searching for truth. And with that goes with accountability and justice. A priest friend of mine was once attended a conference, and they asked him, describe to us Rwanda today. And he said, I can give two images. Rwanda is a cemetery and is a construction site. The two images. So a cemetery and a construction site. A cemetery in the sense that on almost every hill you have graves. You even have people we haven't discovered where they were put or who killed them. Some families are even still hoping that they will see their relatives. That's what I mean by a cemetery. But also we have memorial sites that remind us where we have been, so memorials. And that can be explained. So keeping memory of those who have died is paramount in the process of reconciliation and healing. But it's also a construction site, and maybe that's where I really wanted to go. The construction site that you don't build a house in one stage. So it takes several layers. So that process of knowing what happened was first of all initiated by a process of Truth and Justice Commission, which we called Gacaca. People sat on the grass, Gacaca means grass, and spoke out what happened and who did what. It was a painful process to go through, but it allowed the Rwandans to know one another, to sympathize, to suffer together, really, to have compassion for one another. And at times, one thought your suffering was so much, and when you listen to the suffering of the other person, then you realize, no, we have to go together. So that's the process of Gacaca. And the Catholic Church had a big stake in this, in what we called Gacaca Ngiristu. So Christian Gacaca, if you like, Christian reconciliation. This was just 2 years before the Jubilee year of 2000. And coincidentally, Rwanda was also celebrating 100 years of evangelization. So what happened then, during that process, many hearts were healed, were mended. And even people who had never spoken to one another, they began to speak. So that's one process. At the same time, we also had to realize that there were so many people in jail. There were more than 130,000 people in jail for prisons that were only meant for 4,500. So how do you deal with these cases? Not only humanly speaking, it's a heavy thing to do, financially. So the country, again, used the same Gacaca process to bring people to speak to what happened. So more or less another step, but now at the government level. I wouldn't say it was necessarily a perfect solution, but under the circumstances, it helped people to begin to live together. Even prior to reconciliation, you begin to think of coexistence, living together. Then of course, how do you repair? People have lost their houses. Of course, my parents and my siblings are not going to come back. But how do you help kids to go to school? Those are also initiatives that help people to begin to regain their dignity, which they had lost. But you don't have to look at reconciliation only from the perspective of the victims. How do you also help the perpetrators or the bystanders to be incorporated? Because if you only look at reconciliation from one side, then it is not reconciliation. There has to be two sides that come together. And so it's a journey that is going on. It will take some time, but we are making some strides.
Absolutely. Time heals, and So with the time, I believe more and more Rwandese will get to know about healing. And at this point, we'd like to take a breath. When we come back, we will delve deeper into reconciliation, healing, and hope. So stay tuned.
Capuchin TV, huduma Katoliki ya uinjilishaji.
Ahadi 15 za Rozari Takatifu. Ahadi ya kwanza. Yeyote yule atakayesali kwa imani rozari hii takatifu atapokea neema kuu zenye nguvu. Ahadi ya pili. Naahidi ulinzi wa kipekee na neema za kipekee kwa yule atakayesali rozari hii. Ahadi ya tatu. Rozari itakuwa silaha kubwa dhidi ya nguvu za kuzimu, itaharibu maovu, itapunguza dhambi na kushinda kutofautiana. Ahadi ya nne. Itafanya fadhila kukua, kazi nzuri kuongezeka, itapatia roho huruma tele toka kwa Mungu, itaondoa hamu ya wanadamu kupenda mambo ya dunia na majivuno yake na kufanya wapende zaidi mambo ya mbinguni. Ni kwa namna gani roho hizo zitajifurahisha na kubarikiwa kwa namna hii? Ahadi ya tano. Roho zitakazojikabidhi kwangu kwa njia ya kusali rozari kamwe hazitapotea. Ahadi ya sita. Yeyote atakayesali rozari kwa uaminifu huku akiyatafakari matendo makuu ya rozari kamwe hatashindwa na ubaya. Mungu hatamwadhibu katika hukumu yake, hatapotea katika kifo asichopangiwa na atabaki katika neema za Mungu na kustahili kupata uzima wa milele. Ahadi ya saba. Yeyote atakayekuwa mwaminifu katika kusali rozari kamwe hatakufa bila kupokea sakramenti takatifu za kanisa. Ahadi ya nane. Wote watakaokuwa waaminifu katika kusali rozari watadumu katika mwanga wa Mungu katika maisha yao na saa yao ya kufa na kupata neema zake tele. Katika saa yao ya kufa watashiriki fadhila za watakatifu waliopo peponi. Ahadi ya tisa. Nitawatoa toharani wale wote waliokuwa waaminifu katika kusali rozari. Ahadi ya 10. Watoto wangu waaminifu katika kusali rozari watapata fadhila kuu ya utukufu mbinguni. Ahadi ya 11. Utapata yale yote unayoniomba kwa kusali rozari. Ahadi ya 12. Wote wale wanaoeneza rozari hii takatifu nitawasaidia katika mahitaji yao. Ahadi ya 13. Nimepata toka kwa mwanangu mtukufu kuwa mawakili wote wa rozari takatifu watapata waombezi toka baraza lote kuu la mbinguni wakati wa maisha yao na wakati wa saa yao ya kufa. Ahadi ya 14. Wote wanaosali rozari hii takatifu ni wanangu na kaka na dada wa wanangu wa pekee Yesu Kristo. Ahadi ya 15. Ibada kwa rozari takatifu ni ishara kuu.
Right, welcome back to Around the Table show with me, Sasha Elizabeth. This is the second session of our book launch today, Risen from the Ashes. I know the subject speaks for itself, but of course the message is centered on the Rwanda genocide, what the messages we learn from that, and this is based on a personal experience of one Father Marcel Uwineza, who is a Rwandese. And a survivor of the Rwanda genocide that happened in 1994, and of course, who escaped death by a whisker. You can give your comments or contribute to this launch via our number 0717 424 866. And our guest speaker today is His Lordship Bishop Rodrigo Mejia. So welcome, and we continue the discussion. Before we went for a break, there was a question that was really pricking me. No, pose the questions at the beginning to the viewer. Forgiving and dining, in your book you state that you had to forgive and even share a drink with the very genocidaire who killed your sibling, the remains of your father. What does it take to to make such a decision? Was it an easy one?
Thank you very much. Forgiveness really means many things, but for me, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. And in the language of some of the scholars, is really doing the unimaginable, if I were to use Jacques Derrida. It's doing the impossible. And forgiveness also can have several dimensions. Have self-forgiveness and also forgiving the other. Mindful that sometimes even the one who wronged you may never come to ask for forgiveness. So how do you move on? And so forgiveness here may really entail a decision to decide to remember the wrong or the injury differently. Or at the same time, really deciding not to be a prisoner of the past. Let me give an anecdote. If any of you ever visits the Vietnamese museum in Washington, D.C., I happen to visit the place, you will see 3 soldiers, American soldiers, who went to Vietnam and they were seriously wounded. And so when they came back, there are monuments there. One of them tells the other, have you ever forgiven those Vietnamese and what they did to us? Then the second one responds, over my dead body, I will never forgive. And then the third, who was listening, said, then they still have you in their prison, don't they? I hope the listeners are understanding. So when you are still unable to forgo or to let go, you too are a prisoner. And mind you, this is a process, so it's not the journey is not the same for everyone. That's one. 2, it's also realizing that, at least from a Christian perspective, that we have all wronged somewhere. We are all sinners. God knows how many times I've been given a second chance. And so it's an invitation to reciprocate the forgiveness I have received. The last time we said the prayer of our Father, right? And so I think, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive. It's very easy to say it, but when you have to live it, it's a grace. Then at the same time, it's a journey. It doesn't happen all of us all at once. In my case, in Rwanda, I happened to have done the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius, and they set me on a journey of interior freedom. And in fact, really the heart of the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius of Loyola. Ignatius of Loyola is the founder of Jesuits, for those who don't know. And at the heart of the spiritual exercises is an invitation to really put order in one's inordinate affections or inordinate life. So when I did these spiritual exercises, I remember in one of the meditations or contemplations, Jesus meeting the Samaritan woman in John chapter 4. You remember, it's a long conversation, and Jesus doesn't judge her. He rather tells her, go and call your husband. And the woman says, actually, they have a long conversation. The woman says, she realized she has had 5 husbands. Jesus forgives her, if you like. She comes to know who Jesus is. And then, after she's set free, she goes to tell the other villagers, come and see somebody who has told me who I am. She's even no longer ashamed of her past. So the spiritual exercises helped me to deal with my past, if I would say. To put order, to heal. So that's really the first. Then when I finished them, my novice master sent me back home for some brief days of holidays. And providentially, I met the man who killed my siblings and exhumed the remains of my father. Now, having been set free, it was now, in a sense, a golden opportunity. I met the man at the graves of my parents. and my siblings. He had been released from jail. In fact, I had had him jailed before I went to the Jesuits, to the novitiate. And then during the gacaca process, which I narrated earlier, he confessed that he had killed, and he was given a minimal sentence, so he was released. Released by the government, but not yet released by my heart. So now when I meet him there, he knelt, I remember vividly, he kneels this way, and then he looks at me. He says, "Marcel, you know what I did. Do you have space in your heart to forgive me?" Now, mind you, at that moment, you are wondering whether, does he mean it? Am I safe? It sounded like a movie, really, mixed reaction. But this is where I say forgiveness is a miracle. Really, you are invaded by something higher than you. We can't forgive by our own. So there is something, it's a decision to make, but we're empowered by God. So I asked him to rise. Remember, he's kneeling. Then we embraced one another. At that moment, I felt like the chains had broken away from my legs. Like I too had been in prison, now I was set free. So the Society of Jesus had given me some holiday allowance, so I took him to a nearby pub. We had a drink, shared, we were shedding tears. It was a moment of my life that I will never forget. And I think this is what Magesa, the late Professor Magesa, read. He has even written it in his book and said, "Marcel, please write down this story." And so forgiveness sets you free. It's not an event, it's a process. So my experience may not be the experience of everyone, but I hope this inspires couples who are often struggling in families, kids who can't forgive their parents, employees who can't forgive their employers. So if by God's grace I was able to get to this level, there are other things we can let go.
Thank you very much for that. Wow, that was quite a decision that really had to have some divine intervention, because it's not an easy thing to do, forgiving someone who killed, deliberately massacred your siblings and exhumed the remains of your father. Your Lordship, Bishop Mehia, you are a trainer of theology and a theologian as well. So what exactly is the contribution of this book to theology, and how important are such autobiographies to the life of theologians?
Well, very concretely, I think Father Marcel, quoting another theologian, Ugandan Katongole, agreed that Rwanda, concerning their own country, that the situation they know, has to be re-evangelized anew. I think this affirmation opens a new horizon, not only for Rwanda. I think that evangelization is a process that never ends, has always to be restarted in every culture, in every country. To recognize that we are not completely Christians, that there are pagan regions still in the map of our heart, and that our cultures need to be evangelized. I think the most great truth I got from the book is the reason for this genocide are not necessarily the devil, are sometimes a collective brain, a collective mentality that is called culture. The people think like that. Whether you belong to this side or the other side, you are shaped your minds. And this being shaped by your minds may interfere with the universality of the commandment of love, you know? And that is that we not only we have to evangelize individuals to get them confession, communion, sacraments, we have to evangelize the cultures. That is the way of thinking, the values of society, the values of living together so that they are respected. It's another dimension. And perhaps as far as liturgy is concerned, we are doing well in the church in the matters of enculturation in Africa. But in the matters of living together, we need a lot to do still. Because we may have Christians that attend Mass on Sundays, which is very good, but it's the easiest thing in Christianity to attend Mass on Sundays. The more difficult is what Father Marcel is saying, is forgiveness. We are not evangelized to forgive one another. We are rather ignoring the problem, the challenge. It is like that, it's the culture, it's the politics, it's economy, and that's it. But we have to evangelize culture, politics, and economy as well. These are set of values that may collide with the gospel at a certain moment. If we inculturate only the points of culture that agree with the gospel, ignoring the others, the evangelization is not complete. And that was, I think, this book puts in evidence that and recognizes officially the need for a new evangelization, not only in Rwanda. I think this book is an alert, a cry of a watchman for all the countries in Africa, for the Catholic Church.
Thank you very much, Your Lordship, Bishop Mehia. Back to Father Marcel. First, briefly, I want you to tell me, before I go, there's a question that is tied to this. Someone would ask, where was the church when all this was happening? And what role did they actually play, maybe, in helping you?
Thank you very much. As you know, we could define the church in many different ways, but my way of defining the church is really a people called by God who have really experienced the love of Jesus Christ and then moved by the Spirit to go on mission. So there is a Trinitarian dimension to the church. And I think that encompasses all the other layers of within the church, whether we speak of the hierarchy or the people of God, all can find themselves in that definition. A people called by a Trinitarian God and sent. So the danger often is to think of the church only from the clergy, the perspective of the clergy. So I want to put that up front. And at the same time, the church has representatives, so that can't be denied. And we've had quite some who are outstanding. If we were to go by different layers, in Rwanda we had some people in the church who died saving lives.
So from your book, it is a beekeeper that finally had you had to seek refuge from him, a Hutu beekeeper.
Wonderful, and I'm glad you're bringing this. You know, St. Ignatius always brings the idea of positive interpretation first. What is positive? Then we can go in what needs to be improved. So there were outstanding examples. I can name Eni Tejeka, and I think I mentioned her in the book, who decided, who accepted to die, actually sheltering people. But there were also coward people, should I say. People one wouldn't want to emulate. One of them is one of the parish priests, where we went to the nearby parish in Byimana and we asked for refuge. They had destroyed everything in our home, and he said, I have no place for you, you go away. So there, up front of the church, they actually beat my mom, which will eventually lead to her serious illness and die. And then we happened to be saved by a wonderful Hutu man who had a beehive compound and put us in the compound where there were bees. So the bees were friendlier than some human beings. So you people listening, care for the environment. It's wonderful. But at the same time, the man realized we couldn't also stay in his compound for long because they were searching for us with dogs. And you know the dogs have the capacity to smell. So they could detect. Every time they passed close to the compound, they started barking. So we had to leave the compound. But he did his best at his own risk, because if they had found us in his compound, he would have died. they would have killed him. That was the law. And so that's the story of how some people were outstanding, but some others were cowards. And that actually led me to some ill feelings or hatred. Let me put it, I say this in the book, really to show the vulnerability of one's life. I think at the heart of this book you will see my own vulnerability. I quit the Catholic Church. I came back, I think, in 97 or 98. I could not step in a church because we had been abandoned by this priest. Mind you, I was young, so the ability to differentiate a parish priest and a larger church was not there. So it's important to realize that the mistake of a priest is not equal to the whole church.
Why did you choose to go back to the church and even become a priest after the gory experience with the religious leaders?
God knows how to write with crooked lines. Let me put it that way. He knows how to write with crooked lines. I happen to have an uncle who is a Fokorari, Muvara, who is actually the one who raised me. And Muvara, every time we came when I was in a seminary, and every time we came back for holidays, he would say, I am giving you some money, you go visit places you like on one condition, you go for mass. So initially I will not go. But when I came back, he's a smart man, he's a medic. So he knew the readings of the day, so he would ask, what were the readings? So I mumbled because I didn't know. So then he said, in my house, I want accountability. You take my money, you use it for what I gave you. But I didn't want to go to church because every time I went to church, I saw that priest who abandoned us. But now I went back to church because of fear of my uncle. Because I wanted to be able to say something when he asks. But then I went to the Jesuit church in Kigali, and the Jesuits there were really wonderful. And I don't mean this to praise them because I'm a Jesuit. They were down to earth. They shared their own brokenness. Many of them had just left Hekima here. One of them is Augustine Karekezi. We had Octave Ugirashebuja. They had just come from Hekima to come and help the country that was broken. And so their messages, their preaching were substantive. So that attracted me. I felt there was something unique in what they said, and the freedom they exhibited.
Okay, our time is up. There's quite a lot we can share about this because there's what the strategies that the government in liaison with the Catholic Church are doing currently, and where are the loopholes? What do they need to do? Maybe before I invite Sister Olga Masango to officially unveil this book, I'll give Bishop just a minute, and let me start with Father Marcel. Just 30 seconds, tell us what is happening, and then we close the discussion with the official book launch.
Thank you very much. As I said, really, this is a journey. It will take many years to heal us than it took to divide us. And this is not to be pessimistic. The human person is complex. And the complexity of Rwanda has several layers of wounds. Not only survivors, we have also wounds of people who lost their relatives in Congo. You have wounds of people who lost their relatives on the battlefield during the Rwanda Patriotic Front, who had sent people to fight in the rebel group. You have wounds of people who lost their relatives in jail. So all these layers, to bring them together, we need to put our energy together. But at the same time, we have made a lot of efforts in education, in healthcare, in helping the victims. But even at a larger level, the Great Lake region needs more reconciliation. So I look at it not only from the perspective of Rwanda, you look at the wounds within Burundi, you look at the wounds within Congo, especially in the eastern part of Congo. I look at the relationship between Rwanda and Uganda. So it's a region that needs greater great harmony and reconciliation.
Thank you very much, Marcel Uwineza. Bishop, how can the Catholic Church help towards sealing these loopholes to ensure that such civil wars do not occur again?
Well, as I mentioned, we have to have the courage to revise, to evaluate our own methods of evangelization, our own approaches to evangelization, that sometimes are too much oriented towards the sacred, liturgy, sacraments, preaching, catechesis, but I bit the touch of daily life, of real human issues that are conditioning the life of a person. We risk to be happy with Sunday Christians, so to say. When we want to say this is a staunch Catholic, we say he always stays there for Mass. But that is not enough. It's okay, of course, to read the Lord, but how is the honesty? We cannot inculturate the gospel into corruption. We cannot inculturate the gospel into violence, into tribalism, into hatred. And these are values. Concretely, even issues of women. We have challenges like the female genital mutilation. It's a human issue, it's a cultural issue, anthropological issue. How can we heal that and evangelize that? Things that are openly in contrast with the values of the gospel, and they are coexisting in our evangelization. We are rather shy or incapable, or we don't know what strategy. My hope is, first of all, that to get aware of that this was a call of Paul VI, St. Paul VI, in his apostolic exhortation, Evangelii Nuntiandi, the gospel, the evangelization today, said that it is important to evangelize the cultures. Pope Francis repeated that in Evangelii Gaudium, the joy of the gospel, where he says, I quote literally because I know it by heart, it is imperative to evangelize the cultures in order to inculturate the gospel. We have been trying to inculturate the gospel without evangelizing the culture, and that is very difficult. I think this is the challenge.
That is the challenge, and probably if everyone reads the message and reads the book to internalize it, we will be able to evangelize. The once star of evangelization, that is Rwanda in Africa, can again shine the light on the world and to save other people. So right now, Sister Olga Masango, the Daughters of St. Paul, she is here from the marketing department of Four Lines Publications Africa, and it is time for us to unveil this book, and I will give His Lordship Bishop. We are going to display the book, and then the guest speaker is going to say a word or statement, so that to set it out there for distribution to every corner of the world. Welcome.
Well, I want to present the book, I am very glad, as a great contribution towards an ecclesial conception of synodality. We are together in the sufferings and in the joys. And that is why this book deserves more reflection and study. I address especially to the faculties of theology, major seminaries, houses, religious houses of formation, pastoral institutes, formations of catechists, all people who have any responsibility of evangelization in the church, not forgetting the small Christian communities and the leaders of the small Christian communities. This book is not a complicated theological book. It's really a narrative theology in the same simplicity as the Bible. Therefore, I am very glad that we start, together with the call for the whole universal church of synodality, this contribution and trying to get into our own reflection. This happens in our neighboring beloved Rwanda. how can it not happen where we are? How can we avoid this to happen again? What can we improve in our way of catechesis, initiation of children, catechesis of adults to be received in the church, so that the mentality is that our identity, first identity is Christian, is not Kenyan, is not Colombian, is not Rwandan. We are Christians. This is our first identity card. When we will reach that point, a genocide will never happen again.
Thank you very much, Bishop Rodrigo Mejia, as you have heard. And this book is authored with the Rwandese as the target audience, but the genocide is just used as the gist, as the anchor point of the message that is put forth. Sister, I will allow Sister to tell us how people can get a copy of their own hard or soft. Briefly, Sister.
Yes, we can have this copy in hard copy in all our bookshops. First of all, in Four Lines Communication Center, in Riverside, Ring Road, Kileleshwa, in Westlands. And we can have the copy also in Four Lines Publications. Order the book through Four Lines Distribution Center. You can have the book also in the Catholic Bookshop, Holy Family Basilica, in Kisumu, in Kwenda side near the Dominican priest, and we can have also the book in Gabriela House.
In Amazon.
And we can order the book on Amazon and also through the website www.4linesafrica.org. So get a copy for you and really learn to journey in reconciliation as Father Marcel has gifted us. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Sister. You are here representing, before I give credits to those who have been working with us to make sure this is live, kindly give credits to those from the Four Lines Publication Center marketing that are with you here.
Yes, we wanted to recognize the presence of Sister Elizabeth Nabuso, a daughter of St. Paul, that she came with us to prepare for this launching. We want to recognize also the presence of Willie Mutuku, our marketing manager, that is here with us.
Thank you, and we send our regards and congratulations first to the author, Father Marcel Uwineza. Congratulations upon the launch of this book. May it achieve its intended purpose. And I would also like to thank our guest speaker today, the Bishop Emeritus of Sodo in Ethiopia, Bishop Mejia Rodrigo, and of course the entire team at Four Lines Publications Africa, led by Daughters of St. Paul. Thank you very much. And I have a team. My camera person has been Simiyu Anthony, and we had on the visual mixing none other than Samuel Cherubor, and in the transmission, on the transmission desk, we have Kevin Kitavi. And since we wrap up, in life we go through a lot of horrendous traumas that some of them last for a short time, weeks, months, others last a lifetime. But this doesn't mean that we should stay as a prisoner to the past. We can still rise above this like a phoenix bird, rise from the ashes, from the catastrophe, stronger, smarter, and more powerful. Allow me to reiterate the words of the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who says we should choose humanity over hatred, compassion over cruelty, and courage over complacency. So reinventing, this is It's an upcoming book by the same author, that is Reinventing Theology in Post-Genocide Rwanda Challenges and Hopes. So I hope we'll get to launch it and we'll get to give you more details about it. For this time, it's a wrap. Thank you very much for staying with us. My name is Asasha Elizabeth. Goodbye.
Capuchin TV, huduma Katoliki ya uinjilishaji.
Amri za Mungu. Ndimi Bwana Mungu wako. Usiabudu miungu wengine. Usilitaje bure jina la Mungu wako. Shika kitakatifu siku ya Mungu. Waheshimu baba na mama, upate miaka mingi na heri duniani. Usiue. Usizini. Usiibe. Usiseme uongo. Usitamani mwanamke asiye mke wako. Usitamani mali ya mtu mwingine. Amri za Mungu.
Kupata
amri za Mungu.
Kama sikiza tune yako, bonyeza neno sikiza likifuatwa na nambari 738 10251.